Greetings, I am Tom Earl. On this week's episode, I interview Isoke Luqman, CEO and founder who is passionate about environmental justice and racial equity. Check it out. Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the celebration. As you know, this is my year of courage. We know you could be anywhere, so the fact that you are here today sharing your gifts and your time means the absolute world to us. We hope you know that we love you just as you are. This week, I have an amazing guest. She goes by the name of Isoke Luqman. How's it going, Isoke?
Awesome.
Yes, indeed. You mind if I read your amazing bio?
I don't.
Isoke Luqman is the founder and CEO of Gardens for Life, an organic pesticide-free vegetable garden installation and delivery service based out of Atlanta. It aims to create equitable and sustainable food networks in the city. She is a racial equity fellow of a nonprofit called Partnership for Southern Equity, which advances policies and institutional actions that promote racial equity and shared prosperity for all and the growth of Metro Atlanta and the American South. Isoke is a graduate from Georgia State University with a bachelor's in Geoscience and a concentration in geography. She is passionate about the unique relationships people have with their environments. That's powerful. I love that. So talk to me a little bit about how did you discover your passion for choosing that major?
Yes. So took me a long time to find out that I was passionate about it. I went through a few different major changes, which probably is why I was 6 years in college. But when I was a little girl, I used to go to a camp called Camp Believers. And it was a wonderful camp that I'm immensely grateful for. Taught me a lot about myself and about being a steward. Taught me a lot about stewardship and just being a caretaker. And so as I was going through all these major changes, I always came back to that idea that, you know, we're caretakers and how much I loved the environment. When I was in camp, we were always outdoors, horseback riding, you know, canoeing, kayaking, biking, you know, hiking, all kinds of stuff. So it really, I want to say, cultivated that passion for me. And so I never forgot that. And when it came time to realize that passion in college, I immediately drew back to that. And that's when I knew, okay, so something in the environmental field. And from there, I just scaled down.
That's powerful. And have you always been somebody who had the courage to follow your passion and search for what's going to make you happy?
You know what? I would say yes, but I didn't always know that I had this courageous spirit about myself. In fact, when I was younger, I would say if you zoom back to Isoke in like, you know, 5th, 6th, 7th grade, she probably would not call herself courageous at all. But now that I can look back, you know, they say hindsight is 20/20. I would say, yeah, I was always this courageous person, but the fact that I didn't know it, it took me a while to really realize how brave I was.
What do you mean by at the time you wouldn't have called yourself that?
Well, when I was younger, I think I was more interested in fitting in because I felt like I stood out. And I was always able to relate to a lot of different people. So I wasn't like a cliquish type of person. And I used to get criticized by my peers for that. You know, I would hang out with like the cooler people, quote unquote, the less cooler people, the smart, geeky people, I guess, just because I love people. And I used to get criticized and kind of called out by people, my friends, because of that. And yeah, but I wouldn't say that I had the courage in the moment to stand up for myself. I think I more so developed that with age.
What was it along the pathway that helped it develop, do you think?
Just being unhappy. I mean, I definitely know some people are content with their unhappiness. I would say I wasn't. And I saw people in my family who were fighting for their happiness, and who have been in my shoes and who have overcome adversity and just took life, I hate to be cliche, but just took life by the horns and really, took ownership of their happiness and the outcomes of their decisions. And so, I just knew being happy needed to be a goal. And that's when I was like, gotta go for it.
So that role model, seeing people around you having the courage to do it, it inspired you?
Yeah, and even like seeing certain celebrities, I know she gets a lot of flack, but Rihanna was somebody I always loved when I was younger and still now, because I just think she embodies that spirit of just like, if I'm happy, like life is going well, and her happiness, I feel like, comes from being content with who she is and being okay with growth and accepting it and learning from it.
It's powerful. And all the amazing ways she expresses herself through makeup line, acting, fashion, cartoons, songs. No, we got appreciation for Rihanna on this podcast. With such an amazing bio, I can imagine that a lot of young people are already looking up to you. And so, for young people, young girls who might be in the situation that you were describing when you were young, what advice might you offer to them?
My advice, take the time to really like get to know yourself, and don't be afraid of the good and the bad. I would say I was afraid of maybe the negative parts of myself that I wasn't ready to show people, because I didn't fully understand it. And so being criticized for it just made it even worse. But also, if you're passionate about something, if you have an interest in something at a young age, like, don't be afraid to develop that and get to know it and be involved in it and meet people who are also involved with it. You can learn so much from other people who have been where you are, or other people who are also interested in things that you are interested in, and being able to relate on a human level really helped. I didn't always relate to people I was in school with, but I was blessed enough to come from a family that encouraged me to be involved in certain activities they saw I was interested in. And from there, I, met girls and boys who were also interested in being able to share stories and just feel comfortable around other people who are interested in the things I am. Really gave me a lot of strength and encouragement.
That's awesome. I appreciate that. And people can know too that eventually, if you follow your heart, you can go on to be the founder of a startup such as yourself. So tell us a little bit about Gardens for Life.
Yes. So Gardens for Life is a pesticide-free organic vegetable garden delivery and installation service. Of course, as you said, we aim to create sustainable food networks within the city of Atlanta. One thing I realized growing up, like I'm a foodie, so when I was growing up, I was like skinny as a twig, and I could put away food and people just couldn't understand it. And what I have noticed is that no matter what we're going through, one thing that always connects people is food. As I said, I'm always interested in how people relate to their environments. And I realize how much opportunity a person can actually have when they're not worried about when is my next meal? Where is my next meal coming from? You know, is this next meal going to nurture me in a nutritious way, or is it going to be, you know, taking away from me? And when I got older and just going in certain neighborhoods, mainly Black and brown neighborhoods, you know, a lot of people who are poor and disadvantaged are worried about where is my next meal coming from and how am I going to feed my children? And they don't have the time to even think like aspirationally. They don't have time to think about my dreams, you know, and things like that because they're worried about right now. My 3-year-old, my 4-year-old are hungry and I have to put food on the table. And so I thought, you know, how can I help that situation? And from realizing how interested I am in the environment and with getting my certification in urban agriculture in 2016, and just my whole journey of interning at different nonprofits that were environmentally based, I realized, you know, sometimes things are missing in the Black and brown community. And I think community and residential gardens and just building that community life, that's what's missing. And so I felt like it was my duty and my purpose to create something that would answer this issue.
Very powerful. Before we go into the racial equity and the social justice and the environmental racism component of what we're talking about, let's just jump into a little bit of the logistics of the business. So people find you like through a website, and then do you come in yourself and do you plant it in their backyard? Is it like in their home thing? Is it hanging gardens? Is it hydroponics? Give me some of that juicy stuff.
Yes. So, you know, what I noticed is that as soon as I started my business, it was like it took off and it was like, now I have to catch up with it. But yes, so my website is in the works right now, but the idea is that we have a full consultation and that involves the space, indoor or outdoor. So if you do want, you know, pots or hanging units, we can do that. If you prefer to have an outside garden space, we would do that as well. And we really just ask our clients, like, what do you need? You know, what do you use on a weekly, monthly basis? And then we map that out and compare it to what's in season. And it's really everything is designed to what is your need. We don't want to put an extra burden on families. If anything, we want to keep the cost down on how much you're paying for your groceries. And we want to give you the courage and the confidence to know where is your food coming from. So after the consultation, I take that information and go on my end and create a full garden design sketch, present that to my client. And from there, they give me the yes or the no, or little tweaks here and there. And then I build the unit on my facility and deliver it on a date of my client's choosing, at a time of their choosing. And because everything is basically pre-designed and pre-installed on my end, as far as building the bed, it doesn't take a long time to install, maybe about 2, maybe 3 hours at most. From there, I give my clients like a care package that involves maintenance, when it's time to water, when harvesting is going to happen. And then I also give like recipe tips on this is what you have growing, and this is certain cool recipes that you can make for the family with what you're growing.
It's awesome. So you will do it in a raised bed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Could you explain to people a little bit what a raised bed is?
So a raised bed is basically a garden bed that is not in the soil.
So it's like 2x4s or, like wood, or what is it?
Yeah. So we use non-treated cedar wood. And when I say non-treated, that means it's not treated with any sort of chemicals or anything like that that would seep into the soil and get into the plants. We do raised beds just because they're a lot easier to manage, as well as you don't have to sort of like amend the soil, as you would if you're planting in the ground. And so we try to keep everything as no fuss as possible.
So you go into your backyard or something, and you're hammering these raised beds together. You dump the soil in, you plant the seeds spaced out perfectly. And then what do you put up in the back of a pickup truck? Like, how do you get it from there to their house?
Yeah. So usually I create the frame of the bed at my house, and then I already know how much soil needs to go in there. And I usually do seedlings versus seeds, just because I feel like seedlings have a better advantage of growing into a flourishing, thriving plant. And also, it's just nice to see something green already, growing for people aesthetically. And so I would arrive with the frame and the soil in bags. And then from there, we put the bed down where you like it, put the soil in, and then plant, put the seedlings in. So the soil and the plants go in when I arrive.
Got you. So you can put the bed kind of awkwardly in the back and not worry about it getting jostled around the okay. And can you please clarify the difference between a seed and a seedling?
Right. So a seed, okay, so an avocado pit would be considered a seed.
Dope.
A seedling is like a tiny plant. So when you're like starting an avocado tree, typically people like put the seed in water so it'll germinate. And within a few days or so, it's kind of like floating on top of the water. And then like a little tiny little sprout comes through. It's a lot more in depth than that, but eventually like a little tiny plant comes through, and that's when it's ready to actually go in the dirt. And then it can grow maybe a few more inches or so, and that's considered a seedling. So a seedling is like a baby plant. So think like a 1-year-old or a 2-year-old.
And so it comes in those like little plastic containers, and it's already got like a little, just tiny stalk, and you take it out of the plastic container, and there's like just a little root system, and you plant it, one of those?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
My dad's a landscaper, so I grew up doing landscape construction. So
So you already know what we're talking about.
I do, but I'm sure a lot of people are listening not knowing. So talk to me a little bit about then the intersection of the racial equity part. So you're also a fellow at a nonprofit called Partnership for Southern Equity. If you could just answer two things. First of all, what's a fellow and what is the work that you're doing?
Okay, so one, a fellow. Sometimes it's hard for me to even answer this myself. I would say a fellow is like a step up from an intern. You're still not technically uh, like an employee of the organization, but it's way more involved than an internship. And I would assume it may pay more. I'm not sure. But what I am in charge of doing is really assessing all the projects that we do. We have three main interest circles: just growth, just energy, and just opportunity. So, just energy has to do with environmental justice. Um, and we're really focusing mainly on like electricity and how people are getting their electricity, how they're charged for it. Um, there are different inequities that are involved with how Black and Brown communities receive their energy or even their bills, and what their bills look like and what they're being charged for. Um, with just growth, that involves green and gray infrastructure. So, highway systems, parks, things like that, and how these cities are placing these green and gray infrastructures and how they're positively or negatively affecting communities. Unfortunately, um, our organization is able to thrive because of inequitable things that go on. And so eventually we'd like to go out of business because there's no longer any racial inequities going on, right? But because we are in business, it's because of that. And so, I think about, I believe, I don't want to speak wrongly here, but I think it was like in the 50s or the 60s, the I-75, I-85 highway system was created here in Atlanta, and a large part of it ran smack dab in the middle of what was considered Black Wall Street here in Atlanta, which is Auburn Avenue, where there were just so many Black businesses thriving. It was really like a hub for Black excellence. And a lot of people can look back at in the archives and really see how where they decided to place this highway system was definitely racially motivated. Atlanta is still a very 50% white, 50% Black city. And there are a lot of things that people don't know about the history of our city, our great city. It's an awesome city. I love it, but there's a lot of things that people don't know that go down still and that have gone down. And so it's basically my job to look at all these interest circles. The final one is just opportunity, that focuses on economic inclusion. So jobs, entrepreneurship, and people having opportunities to be involved in things like that. And I'm really kind of just soaking all that in and aiding in the different projects that we have that target these three interest circles. We also have some special projects. One that I'm mainly involved in is called Resident Leaders for Equity. We look at MPUs, specifically MPUV here in Atlanta.
And what does that mean?
MPUs are neighborhood planning units. So within cities, and I'm not the best at explaining this, but within cities, there are neighborhoods. and each neighborhood has geographical boundaries. Even when you're driving in neighborhoods, you might see like the streets have like the name of the neighborhood if you look up top. And so this neighborhood in particular is going to be receiving a lot of economic changes. A lot of people might call it gentrification.
Mm.
And it's undergoing it now. And so we really want to make sure that stakeholders, people who have been in this community for years, who have longevity, know what's going on and know ways that they can be involved in a positive way with this change that's happening, because it's going to happen regardless. But also so that they can be more knowledgeable about the language with these changes. You know, I think a lot of people are not educated about the language of gentrification and what it looks like. And if they knew what was going on and knew like what these people are really saying when they're coming into your community, you can build power amongst your community and really speak in a way that's like, this is what we want. If that's not what you're bringing, don't come here.
Mm.
So that's what we're doing now. It's a 9-month training cohort, which is just like a class. And so we're training these people on how to create power, really, and how to grow that power and how to really speak for their community in a way that's beneficial.
It's powerful. What is some of the language, if you could give us just I know it's a huge class you're teaching. So if you could give us a crash course, what is some of the language that you feel people don't know around gentrification, and what is some of the ways where they already have power but aren't aware of that power?
Sure. Okay, so I would say so for instance, when certain corporations are interested in coming to Atlanta, for instance, we have like Amazon is wanting to build their headquarters in Atlanta. I think there's another big corporation that wants to come here too. But these headquarters are going to be built in certain areas. And so when business comes to a community, it sends out sort of like a tidal wave of of economic inclusion or exclusion. And so people who are invested in these projects, who know about these projects coming when they're coming, who's involved with it, are typically people who are going to meetings. These are people who know about meetings, um, who have the time to go to these meetings. And a lot of times when you go into these Black communities, they're not aware of what's about to happen because nobody's informing them. And they're not really worried about being informed because, again, they have to worry about, I got to feed my kids. I got to, go to work. I have to, pick my kid up from daycare, stuff like that. But my main thing is when people with money come into your community, you need to know what they want, because when the Mercedes-Benz Stadium was built, there's a few historical Black neighborhoods that are just up the street from the stadium. If people don't know about Mercedes-Benz Stadium, I mean, that was a huge project that was built, and I mean, billions of dollars that it brought to Atlanta. And a lot of the people that lived in these Black and brown neighborhoods, they were getting knocks on their door from people who were like, I want to buy your house for, like, let's say I don't know, 60,000 straight out cash, when their house is actually worth 400,000, right? But because somebody is coming to you with cash, and these are people who live check to check, they're just seeing money, right? But they're being swindled out of so much more. Um, Sometimes these corporations are bringing businesses that don't blend in with the community. Some people can't afford to shop at Whole Foods, but bringing in a Whole Foods is going to bring certain people who can afford that, and it's going to start driving other people out. Property taxes are going to start to increase. Um, and so there's so many parts to this. Um, but the main thing is we're looking for people who are showing leadership within these communities, people who are presidents of their committee boards, people who are involved at their schools, at their churches, and looking to teach them on being leaders in their community, but also how to get people on your side and how to build strength in numbers. And when you're walking into these rooms, you know who these people are and you know what their agenda is. And so you can call these people out for it, or you can hold these people accountable. A lot of these elected officials are not doing what they're supposed to do, or they promise you something and they don't keep their word. Um, we also teach them about, this is what your elected officials said they were going to do. Are they doing it? And if not, you need to show up and demand that they, come through on their word. So there are a lot of components to it, which is why it's like almost a year-long training course. But I would say that's sort of the tip of the iceberg.
That was powerful and really comprehensive in such a short period of time, especially since we put you on the spot. That was a really good overview. And, we hear the word gentrification a lot, and it's a easy topic, I think, for people to try to quote to give them social capital of downness and wokeness without really knowing anything about it. So I really like how you've added the complexity and the nuance. And so I really appreciate you providing that value for our listeners.
No problem.
Tell me about then, so we have a little bit of the landscape of the racial equity and social justice component. And you touched upon it briefly, but if you could go into a little more depth, how it intersects with the business that you founded, how sustainable food and food deserts, access to food, having that kind of stuff within your home, within your backyard, how that relates to creating racial equity.
Yeah. So I'm going to, touch on my own personal journey. When I underwent my training to become specialized in urban agriculture in 2016, I went through a company, another nonprofit called Havashaw, and they are really centered on connecting Black people with the earth. I think for a lot of Black people in America, we don't realize how disconnected we are with the earth. And with slavery, that was really a unique, traumatic experience that was created for us. Having to be forced to work the cotton fields, seeing Black bodies hung from trees. Blood-stained cotton and running through the forest from dogs and people who were trying to kill you and hunt you down like animals. you know, going through the swamps, trying to just run away. There are so many intersectionalities that we have with the earth, but I think it's important to connect us back to where we started when we were in Africa, and we were masters of the earth. We were masters of growing, and there was this spiritual relationship that I think still happened during slavery times and after, but was sort of misconstrued. And so when I underwent that training, I realized that this is an important training for Black people to go through, whether you're deciding to be a grower or not, because it really teaches you about growing self. And so I feel like for me, with my business, it's therapeutic, not only for me, but for other people, and specifically a lot of Black people. Um, and I just feel like with race, when people are trying to attack a community and a people, they go after the food. Um, when you hear about, just historical tactics, they're bombing farms and food sources, and it sort of cuts off and creates chaos. And I feel like within our own communities, Black and Brown communities, that's what we've seen. They stick these fast food restaurants into our communities. They get us hooked on just the worst foods, and then we start thinking in a mental way that diabetes runs in my family, hypertension runs in my family, but does it really? A lot of this stuff is learned through years and generations of having to take the scraps off of what was given to us. When you think about chitlins and pig's feet and just even fish and grits. I just learned this recently. Came from slavery and from slaves just being creative with the scraps that they were left with. And I think I'm just so passionate about teaching our people, like, you don't have to settle for the worst because you can get the best. You can grow it yourself and not even have to think or worry about where is this coming from, because they're also putting crazy stuff in the foods that you buy in the stores. So I think I feel like race sometimes can be an ambiguous topic. People will make it a ambiguous thing. They'll say, like, this is not linked to race. How could this be a racial issue? But when you live in a city like Atlanta, 9 times out of 10, it's probably has some sort of racial undertone. And so I just felt like this, meaning my business, Gardens for Life, is something that I can give back to my community. It's also showing me how I can help preserve and sustain the earth. This is my only home until they make Mars or discover Mars to be suitable for life. And I have tens of thousands of theories about that, but we won't get into that. Until that happens, planet Earth is the only place that we have. And if they are shipping people off to Mars, 9 times out of 10, it's not going to be people who look like me. So I just feel like we gotta do better. And I'm not saying this is the only way, but I feel like this is one of the ways.
I really appreciate it. It reminds me of the quote where you see the circles where your passions and the world's needs intersects. There's your opportunity to serve, and it just shows how wherever we're at, whatever our passion is, we can contribute towards creating equity and a world free from discrimination and justice. So I appreciate the variety you're bringing to this podcast of ways to do it. So I appreciate that.
Thank you.
We've been using the word a lot. So just to make sure people understand, what's the difference between equity and equality?
Oh, yes, I love this question. So I always like to paint a picture of three little boys trying to watch a baseball game. One boy is very tall, one boy is of medium height, and the other boy is pretty short. Now, equality would be each of these boys standing on a wooden crate of the same height, right? So the tall boy can see. The medium boy might have to stand on his tippy toes to see here and there, but the short boy can't see at all. Now, when we're talking about equity, equity would be the tall boy getting a crate that allows him to still see the game. The medium boy probably needs maybe a crate that's maybe like a foot higher than the original one. And the shorter boy needs a crate that's maybe 3 feet higher, right? Everybody is still able to see the game, but their needs are different. And so a lot of the times, equality is used in an insidious way to still keep people at a disadvantage. Because we hear equality and we think, oh, equality, like everybody getting the same thing. But if I come from a community and I need, a $20,000 scholarship, but the equality in it is that I only get 10,000, like that's not enough. So now I have to source money from other places, right? Whereas someone from maybe a more advantaged background, 20,000 is perfect for him because he already comes from a family that can, give him whatever he needs, get him that car he needs, get him that apartment he needs, so on and so forth. And so I like to say equity is about everybody getting what they need so that they have an opportunity to be on a fair playing field. Versus equality is everybody gets the same thing, even though you might need a little more or you might not need as much. We all still getting the same thing.
I love it. And I think, what the graphic does a good job of exemplifying through the heights is that we all aren't starting at the same place.
Nope.
So even if you give us the same amount, it's just going to move us along. But if we started at different places, we're still not in the equity. The equality is the aspiration. Equity is the actual thing that can bring us there.
Right.
I appreciate the conversation on that. And so applied to the kind of work you're doing, what is equity? How does that look applied?
How is it applied? So of course, we push for the advancement of policies that promote racial equity. One thing I like to say is that everybody I work with at PSE, Partnership for Southern Equity, is that we live equity. And so I think with the other, with some other nonprofits that I've worked at, after they leave at 5:00 in the afternoon, it's like a whole nother life, I feel like within the nonprofit world, it's the type of work where you either feel it, you live it, or you don't. And so that's a hard question for me to answer exactly, because like just because I walk out of the office, my job is not exactly done.
Mm,
But we showcase equity within our workspace, within, um, when we're going into these communities, um, we're asking them, what do you need for us to come and speak to you? Do you need
mm,
us to come to you? Do you need, us to pick somebody up for them to be able to be in the room? We are educating them on things and topics that they might not have ever heard of. Um, and mainly we're building relationships so that, partnership for Southern Equity is the biggest word, partnership.
mm.
And I realized that if you want to really do work in the community, oh yeah, I've got this $100,000 grant. Everybody is going to just trust me off the bat, right? Like you have to come in a humble way. You have to speak to the people. What do they need? What do they want? What are they frustrated about? And then, get to know people. I think a lot of the times these companies who have money to bring into community their heart might be in the right place, but they're still operating from an inequitable approach with their philanthropy um, tactics, to where they're just throwing their money, and that's not how we operate. Nothing is disrespectful. Everything is on the up and up. We like to build trust first. And again, real relationships that last, um, because it's not a campaign, it's a mission and it's a movement.
It's powerful. I feel that two things I've heard you explicitly say, two of the difference between equity and equality in your work is I was hearing you say like equality would be these corporations saying, well, we provided the town hall. Like everybody had the chance to come. Why didn't you come? Whereas
Right.
equity is like, do I even have a job that would allow me to come? Do I
Hmm.
have the time? Do I have the transportation? Do I
Right.
feel I'm even welcome there? Do I even
Right.
have a knowledge enough to know what to ask?
Exactly.
And the second example I thought was really powerful you gave is that equity, I think in the nonprofit space is a 360-degree conversation that includes the funders and the
Hmm.
community as well as the people giving the services. So I thought that
Hmm.
it was a really great answer. I appreciate that. How has your faith influenced your life and the values that you have? And what is your faith? I know, but for the folks listening.
Yes. So I am Muslim, and so I follow Islam. And wow, Islam has influenced my life tremendously. I was born and raised Muslim. Um, and I would say, like, when I was younger, I did not appreciate it as much as I do now.
Hmm.
Um, I would say because Islam teaches and promotes peace and love and responsibility and accountability, I think is why I'm able to move in these spaces and really be fueled in a passionate way, um, because of what I was taught. Um, I love Islam. I don't call it a religion. I call it a way of life, because that's literally what it is. You know, everything that I do stems from an Islamic practice or value or ideal. And I feel like as I was getting older and sort of, like we all kind of struggle with our faith sometimes. And as I was going through my like struggling stage, I was reading these like self-help books by authors like Miguel Ruiz and Deepak Chopra. Um, and everything that they were saying was like, this is Islam, you
Mm.
know? And every time I read other books besides the Quran, and I can just see Islam in all of these different places. And so um, I'm definitely not somebody who, throws my religion on other people or throws that my certain way of life on other people or expect them to um, follow suit. But if anything, I would say by living this particular way of life and just being an example, uh, I've gotten a lot of people like, like, what is your faith? Like, and some people don't even have to ask, even when I'm not wearing a hijab or anything, they're like, are you Muslim? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, yeah, I can tell just by the way you like carry yourself or things like that. And I just think Islam is so beautiful and it's so humbling, and it also teaches me to connect with nature. There's so many ayats and surahs that connect you with the creation, and I think that means something. Like, obviously we were put on this earth, so for us to be disconnected from it constantly, I think would be a big mistake. And I always feel like Islam brings me back to that.
That's really wonderful. And I appreciate always getting to hear people's different perspectives on Islam because it's such a diverse religion.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes people have a stereotype in their mind of what a Muslim looks like. And usually it doesn't include either of us. And yet we both are. What is a misconception, or what is something you wish people knew about Islam?
What is something I wish they knew? I would say that I wish people knew how much Islam promotes healthy and positive community life.
Mm.
And when I say community, I don't just mean like Muslim community. I just mean like community, like people communing and coming together. And like you said, Islam is there are people so diverse within this way of life who are following it. And I feel like to be Muslim, it just wouldn't be right if you weren't in congruence with that same diverse flow,
Mm.
and to be open to diversity. I think about when people go on Hajj and it's like millions of people, and everybody is coming from a different place, a different background, different experiences, and they're all coming together to celebrate and to worship. And that's really powerful.
Yeah.
And I feel like Islam can be sort of a beacon in the darkness, through what it teaches and what it promotes. When we live in a society that's always trying to create differences amongst each other and reasons to hate each other because we're different. And I feel like Islam celebrates diversity and says we can still work together and love each other despite or because of our differences.
Mm. I love that. And speaking of community, we connected because we both have a relationship with the amazing Intisar, who was a past guest. People can check that interview, tomrell.com/Intisar. And she sent in a question she'd like me to ask you. So,
Really?
yes, indeed. First of all, she said that you deserve to be recognized for your pure intentions, for the work that you do in the world and in your community. So she wanted to share that affirmation. And with the work that you do, it requires so much human interaction and sincere giving. How do you re-energize yourself so that you can keep on giving?
Ooh, that is such a good question, because literally I was feeling like this the other day, like too much human interaction. I'm depleted of energy. I gotta check out. But really that's kind of my answer. Like checking out sometimes is the best thing you can do for yourself. I mean, I don't mean completely check out, but I have to center myself constantly, because I do deal with a lot of people. I deal with a lot of energies, a lot of temperaments, attitudes, and so I have to exhibit a lot of self-care. When I realized I was getting this fellowship and might possibly continue working for this organization, I decided, I think it's time for me to get a therapist, just because sometimes we just need somebody to talk to who is not, a friend or a family member, and somebody who can look at our lives and just not know who we are, and that's what my therapist has been for me. And she's really, really helped me break down and really understand myself better. And because I am understanding myself better, I'm able to know when my tolerance is getting low and when it's time for me to, replenish myself. And I do that through hiking alone, sometimes eating, which is not always the best habit. The gym, prayer, so many things, just doing things that I love to do is what keeps me giving and working.
Well, I appreciate that. I know that's a vulnerable question, and so I appreciate how you went there and shared that with us, because like the question I asked earlier about your advice to young people, I know there's a lot of people who are listening who are doing important work that like you're doing, and to hear someone that I'm sure they're inspired by right now share that, it's really helpful. So I do appreciate that. So for those who can't see, next to Isoke is this beautiful portrait of her. And I recommend, if you're listening on the podcast, to just take a look at it when you get a chance. What's the story behind it?
Yeah, so my best friend, her name is Maya. She is a artist here in Atlanta. She's from Louisiana, and she created this beautiful portrait for me. She was doing her first ever artist showcase, and yeah, I mean, she was kind of keeping it under wraps. And when I saw it, I was just like taken aback. And honestly, it was kind of expensive. So I was like, I can't afford to buy my own self. Like, I can't afford me. But I think it was my graduation, I graduated in May, and she gave it to me as a graduation gift. And so,
Oh, that's powerful. So would you like to plug her social media so folks can share the love for how amazing it is?
absolutely. So her personal page is Maya, Maya .Briane, Briane. And so from there you can follow her art page. She has all the links on that page, and she is just very, very special. Her art really speaks mainly to just the Black female experience, I would say. And I just feel like she captured me in a way that I see myself, but I didn't think other people did. So, yeah.
That's wonderful. This has been such an inspiring and empowering episode. Really, the knowledge that you brought, first starting with inviting us into your own experience as a young person, and your passion and your organization is so inspiring. Gardens for Life. I love it so much. And walking us through the language we can use to really talk informed about gentrification and the ways we can empower neighborhoods. And then inviting us into what Islam means to you. It's been such a great episode and journey. So I just want to thank you so much for that and affirm you for all the awesome work that you're doing in the world.
Thank you. I appreciate you for having me on here.
My pleasure. And thank you to Intisar for saying, you should connect.
Right.
Where can folks reach you to tell you how awesome you are?
So people can reach me at Isoke Luq. That's SOKEMLUQ. You can also follow Gardens for Life's Instagram page at Gardens for Life _. Gardens for Life, that is FOR. So a lot of people use the number 4, but it's FOR. So yes.
Dope.
Check me out.
For folks who are wondering, we do have show notes with every link we have mentioned. tomrell.com/Isoke. That's ISOKE. tomrell.com/ISOKE. Otherwise, just go to tomrell.com/blog and you'll see it as this week's featured episode. All of the links from Maya's to Isoke's to Gardens for Life, and we'll put a Partnership for Southern Equity's link as well in there if you want to support their nonprofit. We'll have all of that queued up for you. My friend, this is high five worthy. Boom! I always like folks to have the last word. What's your invitation to people to do, to be, to consider, to think about?
I would say be like water, and recognize that other people are going through hard stuff just like you are. People feel just like you do. They hurt, they laugh, they smile, they love. So be gentle with yourself and be gentle with others.
Powerful words. That's been the theme this whole episode. I feel like I said powerful a million times because it has been. I'm like, say a different affirmation time. Say it. And then I just can't help it. It's what comes out.
If that's what comes out, you gotta trust it.
It's true. So I just want to thank you once again. This has been absolutely amazing. And want to encourage folks, be sure to follow Isoke's work. If you're in the Atlanta area and you're looking for a garden, consider reaching out to them. They do powerful, there it is again, powerful work. So thank you so much, my friend.
Thank you.
My pleasure. For those listening, as always, we're wishing you peace and blessings. One more thing. I'd love to continue the conversation. Feel free to join me at tomrell.com/join. Subscribe below, or let's connect on social media. Tom Earl Artist. Thanks again for watching.